Well, I was a young adult, and I went to the dentist because I had a lot of work that needed to be done. And when I went to the dentist, I was scared to death because when I was growing up, of course, I'd never gone to the dentist. And that was just not a normal thing to do. So when I got in there, I had 14 cavities that needed to be taken care of, and 2 teeth needed to be pulled. And he pulled out this needle that looked like it was about 2 feet long. And I about croaked. And I said, "There's no way you're putting that in my mouth." And he says, "Oh, it won't hurt." And I said, "No way, Jose, you're not putting that in my mouth." And so I was so upset, and I was just traumatized by what had happened. And so he said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you a prescription, and you come back in 2 weeks." And so 2 weeks later, I took 2 pills before I left, and I stumbled into his office, and I'll tell you what, he was my best friend. I wasn't afraid of him anymore until he pulled that needle out. And when he did, I said, "Mm-mm." And he said, "Well, don't worry." He said, "I'll give you some laughing gas, and you won't feel a thing." So he gave me the gas, and he said, "You'll still be awake, and you won't feel a thing, but you'll know what's going on around you." He said, "It won't put you under, so you don't have to worry about it." So I said, "Okay." So I laid back in the chair, and he started working on me, and I closed my eyes because I didn't want to watch him while he was doing his work. While I laid there with my eyes closed, I could see out in this total black, I could see a round globe. And on that globe, I was on it. And I was on my belly, and I was crawling around, going around this globe. Well, as I was crawling around this globe on my belly, I heard this voice. This was total blackness all the way around this globe. And I heard this voice, and the voice said to me, "This is all there is. There isn't any more. This is all there is. There isn't any more." All the way around that globe, I kept hearing that voice. "This is all there is. There isn't any more." And I'm thinking, oh, this is awful if I just have to keep going round and round and round forever. I mean, life is bad enough, let alone it just going on and on and on, So as I come around the top part of the globe, I saw this peak, and it was like an upside-down V. And I was going up to the top of the globe, and as I got to the top of the globe, I went over this peak, and when I did, it was the most excruciating, awful struggle I'd ever had in my life. It was just intense. It was awful. And it wasn't painful, but it was just horrible. And I kept thinking, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. But I finally got past it. I got on the other side, and there's that voice again. "This is all there is. There isn't any more." And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh. It was just like round and round this globe I went. And I kept hearing this voice, and I kept going over this peak that was just horrible. And I woke up screaming, and I had my arms around this dentist's hips. I mean, he must have been 90 years old, and he's like this, thinking, what in the world is going on? But I was screaming, and I was crying, and I just felt like everything vulgar came out of me when I was screaming. I asked him if I had sworn, and he said no, but I didn't believe him. I just kept thinking that I said terrible things when I was coming out of that dream. And he finally, just in dismay, told me to go home. He didn't know what to do with me. He'd never had anything like that happen. So anyways, I went home, and all the way home, I kept hearing this voice. It kept saying, "This is all there is. There isn't any more." And I kept thinking, there's got to be more to this than that, to life than what I was living, what I was hearing, and what I was enduring. And I could remember when my grandfather told me, he was a lay preacher, and I was a little girl, and he used to tell me, You know, there's a heaven and there's a hell. And if you want to get to heaven, you got to be good. And if you want to go to hell, you're going to be bad. And I was like, I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. And after that little scenario and that voice kept pounding at me that this was all there is, I kept thinking, there has got to be more. There has got to be more, but I didn't know what it was. Nobody ever told me how to get to heaven. They just said, you got to get there. So I went to God because my grandparents, when I was little, that's what they did. They prayed all the time. And so I thought I would try that. I hadn't done that before on my own. So I got on my knees one night and I said, God, I want to go to heaven and be with you someday. And I'm really sorry that I've been a bad person. Nothing happened. And I expected something to happen, but it didn't. And the next night, I got back down on my knees again and I said, God, I don't want to go to hell. Would you help me to get to heaven? I don't want to go to hell. I know I've been bad. Please forgive me for my sins. Nothing happened. And I'm like, what is going on? So the next night, I get on my knees again and I said, God, please forgive me. I know I haven't been the kind of person that you want in heaven, but I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I don't want to go to hell. Nothing happened. Well, the next night, I finally was desperate. I was really angry. Did you ever get mad at God? Well, I was. I didn't know where he was or anything, but I was mad at him. And I, just like this, and I said, okay, God, if you are there, you're going to have to prove yourself to me, because if you don't, I'm not going to know what to do. And how can I believe in a God if I don't see you or hear you? So you're just going to have to prove it to me that you're there. And I went to bed that night, and I was feeling pretty hopeless. And I was feeling really discouraged. And I kept thinking, that probably isn't a God after all. This life is probably just whatever it is right now. I might as well just forget whatever I thought. I went to bed, went to sleep. The next day was Saturday. And I got up, and Saturdays were kind of a nothing day, and I was watching TV. And I was watching a program where it was out in India, I think it was, where they blow their horns and the snakes come out of the baskets, and they were just talking about it and what they do and everything. And I'd seen it before, so it wasn't anything new. And all of a sudden, the program was preempted. And you know how you kind of stop and listen when nothing comes across your TV because you're waiting for something to happen? And so I'm like, oh, I wonder what's coming. And all of a sudden, I heard this loud voice, and it said, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." And I'll tell you what, I was sitting in a couch like this, right in the end. And I started shaking all over. I got red, just red. My heart was pounding. I could feel it. And I started crying. And I knew that was God. And it was like, whoa, that was God, And I kept thinking that verse. I knew that verse. I think I heard my grandpa say that verse. And so it must have been in the Bible. Well, my Bible was buried in my closet in a box way in the bottom. And so I ran to the closet and I dug everything out and I found my Bible. And I realized that it was in there because after a while I found it. It's in Matthew. And it says, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." And there's a God. He's really here. Wow, this is so neat. He really is a God. And I was so excited. For 2 weeks, I was on cloud 9 because I was so happy to know that this life was not all there was, that there was a God, and there was more.